So that actually the second step in the 3 steps was to gain control of all pressures which arise through illusion and fantasy within the life of the person. Then the 3rd step consisted of the purification of the mind. The mind, so that it could be no longer a problem to the life of the person. The purification of thought included, of course, complete overcoming of selfishness, self-interest, pride, all of the arrogances, and all of the worldly values which many people cling to so tenaciously. In other words, the mind must be detached from everything which will not survive after the body dies. We are to take with us in the mind only that which is not dependent upon the body, but is dependent upon the insight of the individual himself. Now, having accomplished these 3 labors over these 3 signs, the individual has become gradually cleared of some of the problems which we face today, because in these recent times we have lost contact almost entirely with this concept. We are no longer in a position to understand just what all this adds up to. But one thing we do know is that gradually so-called progress has destroyed the integrity of millions and millions of people. We are no longer able or willing to use the body and the physical embodiment for the improvement of nature, for the strengthening of character, for the extensions of knowledge, and through the birth and rebirth within ourselves of those elements and factors and parts which are necessary to our perfection. We have therefore gradually changed our Father's house into a place of merchandise. We have taken it and we have disfigured the entire purpose of evolution. We have failed to recognize the real reason for the gift of the sacred year. For a year is a period set aside for the growth of being. It has something to do every year in repeating and repeating the evidence of what is necessary. The year becomes the great teacher of each person if that person will be observant of what happens during the months of that year. He will also gradually come to recognize that the loss of the memory of the past, as cancer when he enters the gates of oblivion, this loss is restored to him at Capricorn. And as he brings his life into perfect order, the whole pattern of his life will be revealed again. He will remember, whereas previously he forgot. Previously he forgot his divinity and remembered only the humanity that was being born in him. At Capricorn, he is no longer locked into the memory of material things, but restores his memory of the divine world from which he came. So the year is a very great symbol of things, a symbol that we all could do something about. If, however, we imagine for a moment that this whole pattern, this astrotheology, does have a meaning that is more profound than we realize, we know that it was protected in one way or another, so that the human being who was not prepared to receive it would not be likely to gain a knowledge which would damage him. But now everything has more or less changed. The old systems have gone away. There are still traces of them, and some very good older systems still function. But for the most part, people today have no consideration for the consequences of action, and they have no realization of indebtedness to the universe, a debt which must be paid by conduct. While this condition remains as it is, we have some of the great tragedies of life. At some time in the remote past, for example, science, which was in the hands of a very exclusive group, not exclusive in the sense of snobbish, but exclusive in the sense of knowing, informed, and morally incorruptible. this knowledge was placed in the keeping of persons who had already forsworn all personal advantage, who had already forsworn any action for profit that was contrary to principle, and had accepted the obligation that everything that man discovers must be brought to the altar of God. Now, as a result of this type of disagreement and discourtesy at the moment, we can take a look at science. Here we have probably one of the most valuable instruments the world has ever been given. An instrument founded in the great triad of mathematics, astronomy, and music. Science which has developed itself in many, many ways and has given us a great number of very pleasant privileges and has made life easier for millions of people. And in this respect has gained our confidence. But we begin to notice something. We notice that the scientist has not taken the obligations that were given in the ancient mysteries. He has not forsworn faith. He has not declared that he will invent only that which will serve good. He does not permit his secrets to be carried out if he is properly informed, if they will bring damage or injury to any other living thing. So what has happened? We have a scientific world which has given us much to be grateful for, but might sometime give us that which will extinguish all the good that science has ever given. This is the type of thing that was a great concern to the ancients, that they will prevent the abuse of the greater knowledge that gradually comes to the human being. This greater knowledge was therefore protected by the rites of initiation, the basic rites of 3 degrees, by means of which it was possible for the person, representing again the embodiment of the Son, to become morally responsible. So in the first degree of the ancient rites were given the first primary purifications. Purification in the mystery system was only symbolized by baptism, because the real purification was not given by water. It was given by the divine power of deity itself. But in this first step, the mind, the heart, and the body were cleansed of selfishness and self-interest. The individual became as a little child, seeking truth, realizing that the things around him which he has assumed to be truth are not necessarily true. Many things that we believe are not so. Many things that we disbelieve will ultimately be proven to be true. And in this mystery of uncertainties, it is very much to our advantage to place certain disciplines upon our own attitudes. We may not know yet why we should do it or how we should make these applications, but that something has to happen inside the individual before it is safe to bestow upon him the wisdom of his race is more or less obvious. There is a great body of wisdom, and there is a great race of people who have found it, built it, created systems for the perpetuation of it, but have never applied it to their own lives. They have never done those things in themselves which can make them safe custodians of the future. In the ancient mystery rites, the Pythagoreans, for example, the master told the disciples very definitely that every disciple who went forth to teach in his turn must do everything possible to find a successor. This successor must be a person whom he has instructed, or has found to be adequately instructed. And only to the person who already has earned the right can the master bestow the mantle of his leadership. And if by any chance he passes out of this life without finding a disciple that is worthy, that is itself part of the necessary lesson. Therefore, to pass on any knowledge in which there is a power to injure, until a person has proven that he is no longer capable of injuring, anything else is dangerous. And it was this kind of ethics of building knowledge into a qualified group that we have known in ancient rites. Now, some people hold these ancient rites to be snobbish, selfish, and that these leaders have intentionally concealed truth because they wanted to govern other people or wanted to be masters over slaves. History has no strength for that support at all. There is no effort to recognize, or no opportunity to prove, or no way of proving that those who truly possess great knowledge were the ones who were the cause of trouble. The ones who are the cause of trouble are those who want to resist knowledge.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be the insects next. It's not up to us. It's not divinely ordained. We're here on chance, and we're going to go away. And the planet will heal. The planet will heal because that's what it does. It heals itself. It's a self-healing organism. It changes and grows. It'll incorporate all of our dead cities into itself, and it will become something else, but it will still be going around the sun for at least a few more billion years or whatever. So this whole thing, we have to save the planet by not putting diapers in the landfill. That's too short-sighted. It doesn't do anything. You have to change yourself, and we'll never do that because the dollars now, everybody wants a dollar and a toy. Everybody's got a cell phone that'll make pancakes and rub their balls, so nobody wants to rock the boat. Nobody wants to change. Don't change anything. And we're in a nice downward glide. I think we squandered great gifts. I think humans were given great gifts. Walking upright, binocular vision, opposable thumb, large brain, making tools. Make tools, large brain, make better tools. Talk, have to like language. You take this, put in here. We learned language, brain got bigger, language. We grew. We had great gifts, and we gave it all up for both for both money and God and mammon, both. We gave it up to the high priests. It's your job. God's will. That's what they say. People say it's God's will. That means God can do anything he wants, so why pray? They say you pray for something. Okay, he didn't answer my prayers. Well, it's God's will. Well, if it's God's will, why did I even pray in the first place? He's going to do what he wants anyway. We gave it all up to superstition, primitive superstition, primitive shit. There's an invisible man in the sky looking down, keeping track of what we do, make sure we don't do the wrong thing. If we do, he puts us in hell and we burn forever. That kind of shit is very limiting. It's very limiting for this brain we have. So we keep ourselves limited, and then we want a toy and a gizmo and gold, and we want shiny things, and we want something to plug in that'll make big things for us. And all that shit is nothing. It's nothing. We gave it all up. And Americans, who also had great gifts, when you take the theory of democratic rule, self-government, okay, they started off wrong. They owned slaves. They didn't let women vote. They didn't let people who didn't own land vote. Fine. They got off on the wrong foot. But the ideas were good. Well, we fucking blew that. We polluted it. We polluted it with this stuff, things, material goods, games, gizmos, toys, gadgets, having possessions. He's got a bigger truck. Did you see his truck? It's bigger than mine. I'm getting a new truck. Here's a big truck. Oh, I'm getting that one. That's what you got, a video in it? You DVD too? He don't have a DVD. I got a DVD, you know. Whatever happened? And all of that is what happened, you know? And that's why I'm divorced from it now. I see it from a distance. I give myself a divorce. I said, George, emotionally you have no stake in this. You don't care one way or another. So watch it. Have fun. You know what? I say it this way. When you're born in this world, you're given a ticket to the freak show. And when you're born in America, you're given a front row seat. And some of us get to sit there with notebooks. And I'm a notebook kind of. Oh my God, did you see that? And I watch the freak show, and I get my notes, and I make up stuff about it, and I talk about the freaks. And the freaks are all humans, and they're like me, and they're all the same. We're all the same. I'm not better. I'm not different. I'm just apart now. I'm separate. I'm over here because I put myself out of the mix. I don't have a stake in the outcome. I'm not a cheerleader for a given outcome now. Oh, they say if you scratch a cynic, you'll find a disappointed idealist. And I would admit that somewhere underneath all of this, there's a little flicker of a flame of idealism that would love to see it all change, but it can't happen that way. And incremental change, it just seems like the pile of shit is too deep.
Now, the surfaces of these objects are composed of two-dimensional regular polygons. But in two dimensions, there are infinitely many of these two-dimensional regular polygons. They go from triangles to quadrilaterals to pentagons all the way up to infinitygons. But in three dimensions, there are only the 5 regular polyhedra that you see here. Now, who knows why? Who could prove that to their colleagues or maybe to their grandmother? In order to construct the surface of a Platonic solid, which is made from these 2D polygons, so that they form real physical 3D corners, you have to use at least 3 of those polygons. And then with 3 of these polygons, we can make some kind of a corner. So if we start, for instance, with just 3 squares, we can fit 3 around the joint vertex. And now we forcefully try to close this open gap. And we cannot do it in 2 dimensions. But if we allow to go in a 3rd dimension, we pop out this 3-dimensional corner. And that's a regular cube corner. And 8 of those corners make up a cube. We could also do that with starting with 3 pentagons around the joint vertex. And then we would get the dodecahedron shown at the bottom. Now we can see why there are exactly 5 Platonic solids. When we use triangles for our surface facets, we have a choice. We can either use 3 triangles forming a 3-sided pyramid, or we can 4 around the corner, or 5 around the corner. If you use 6 triangles around the corner, it gives you a flat kind of kitchen floor, okay? No longer a polygon. So we have 3 options for triangles. But when we use squares, only 3 squares work. By the time we add a 4th square, again, we have flat tiling. And with pentagons, 3 pentagons work and form the dodecahedron. Any higher n-gons are useless. Hexagons just make a flat tiling, and if you take heptagons or higher, then they don't even fit around the corner anymore. Okay, if you got that, then here is the test. Now we take a leap into the 4th dimension. We apply exactly the same kind of thinking to answer questions. How many regular Platonic polytopes are there in 4D? So how can we find out? Well, the key insight is that we need to use these regular Platonic solids to essentially make the surface or some kind of a thick crust of these 4-dimensional objects. And now we have to see how we can form 4D corners out of these 3-dimensional Platonic solids. So we took a few regular n-gons that did not quite fill the space around the vertex, and then we forced this gap to close. Now we do this 1 dimension higher. We'll take a few Platonic solids, and I'm using the same models, but now assume that this is just the front, and that basically I'm holding 3 cubes in my hand. So behind each square there's a complete 3D cube, okay? And they all share this one edge here pointing towards you. And now I'm going to force this empty wedge of space out of existence by closing that gap. But now I cannot do that in 3 dimensions, obviously. But when I do this, and I allow it to go into the 4 dimensions, something magic happens. I get a 4-dimensional corner. Now we just have to count for how many different ways we can do that, given the Platonic solids, the 5 ones that we have. In this case now, the crucial value is the dihedron. Now, the surfaces of these objects are composed of 2-dimensional regular polygons. Little angle, that is the angle between 2 adjacent faces. For the cube, it would be 90 degrees. And this dihedral angle tells us how many of these objects we can fit around the common edge, and then how much empty. But in 2 dimensions, there are infinitely many of these 2-dimensional regular polygons. They go from triangles to quadrilaterals to pentagons all the way up to infinitygons. But in 3 dimensions, there are only the 5 regular polyhedra that you see here. Now, the surfaces of these objects are composed of 2-dimensional regular polygons. But in 2 dimensions, there are spaces left over that we can now force to close, so we pop out into the 4th dimension. For a tetrahedron, now the surfaces of these objects are composed, and that critical angle is about 70 degrees.